Well, San Francisco always seemed like it was the big city. And it is still. But we could see it from our backyard. We could see it from our deck.
That was Erin Lim, creator and host of Bitch Talk Podcast. I'm Jeff. Welcome to Storied San Francisco, a weekly podcast where San Franciscans from all walks of life share stories, and you get to know your neighbors. In this podcast, Erin tells the story of her parents, how they met, and what life was like for her growing up in the East Bay. She ice skated and went to Hella Giants games with her family. Quick disclaimer, Erin and I are actually engaged. I've wanted to have her on the show since we launched back in 2017 for obvious reasons, but we're just now getting around to it. I hope you enjoy. Here's Erin.
Yeah, my father, Lawrence Chow Lim, was born, I believe, in Chinatown or close to Chinatown in San Francisco in 1929. And his parents were, from what I understand, an arranged marriage. And I don't know if they called it an arranged marriage back then, but they came to the States, I don't know what year. I think the story is that my grandfather came over first, and then my grandmother came over, but she had to stay at Angel Island for a period of time before she could actually enter into the city. And my grandfather bought his name. It was a paper name. So our Chinese name is really G, which I didn't find out, I don't know, maybe in the 2000s, early 2000s. And but he bought the name Lim. And so, yeah, that's kind of the origin story of my family. And my dad was born. He had a brother named Eddie. He had a sister named Pansy. They're both deceased, as well as my father. And there's one other Lim out there. Her name's Gloria. There was another sibling who passed away early in age, I think in her teens. And I don't know what age she was and what order she was in the lineage of the siblings. But yeah, so my dad was born and raised San Franciscan, grew up in Chinatown, and met my mom in the early 70s. Yeah.
And what's your mom's story?
So my dad was married previously, and that's how I have my half-brother and half-sister. And Daryl Lim was on the podcast 2 seasons ago, your first season. Yeah.
I'll figure it out.
So at some point you'll have my sister, who's basically the mayor of San Francisco.
Yep.
And anyways, my mom came out to the Bay Area, to Pacifica specifically. Try to say that.
From where? From
Kansas.
Okay.
And she got the hell out of there in 1969 because
Richard Nixon?
Yeah, Richard Nixon. I don't know. Nixon became president, and my mom was like, I'm getting the hell out. She was 18. She's in a small town called El Dorado. Funny side story, that's where Obama's white half of his family's from as well, so I'm pretty sure we're related. I'm going to stick with
your
that story
is white.
Forever. And my mom's white, yeah.
Yeah, so your mom and his mom basically were friends.
Sure.
But not.
Sure, that's the story.
Yeah.
But it's a very small town.
Right.
Very small. So I mean, I'm sure we're cousins, right? That's how that works out?
I thought cousins with both Barack and Michelle.
No.
Or related or something.
My mother loves Ancestry.com. I think that's the one she was looking up. Anyways.
So your mom had relatives out here. She was lucky enough to have...
Yeah.
So that it wasn't just like, Nixon's president, I got to get out of this small place. I'm going to go to California.
Yeah, because her grandmother was there, Eula,
right. Yeah.
in Pacifica. As I get older and learn, you learn the stories of your parents because they're humans too. Like, my mom was a kid and she barely had
18.
any money to her name, barely. And
a woman.
Yes, she's my mother. She's a woman.
I mean, no, but that's significant.
Yeah, a young woman.
Just starting to be okay in the world
right.
at that time for women to do things like that.
Well, not
but
really
still
okay.
Largely unheard of.
Right.
So,
yeah. So she moved to Pacifica and moved in with my grandmother. And yeah, she started working, I believe, pretty much right away at Safeway, good old Safeway. And she started out as one of their telephone operators, like when they had the boards.
Switchboard.
There you go. Thank you. Like a literal switchboard operator plugging in. She could tell you the story better, but which I think is pretty cool. So my grandma Eula was working for Safeway, I believe, and that's how my mom got the job. So then my dad, who was much older than my mother, but either lied or just didn't tell her how old he was a tax auditor for the state of California, and Safeway was one of his clients. And I guess he was in the lunchroom, break room, whatever. My mom was wearing red shoes, and that's the story I've heard.
The woman in red.
Yeah. And I'm going to guess he asked her out because my mom was pretty shy. I think she's still kind of shy in a way.
Yeah.
I can't see her asking my father out, who was older. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So they hit it off, obviously. Boom. And then, so you grew up in San Leandro, right?
I grew up in the East Bay. Yes. Born in Burlingame. I think within the year I was born, my parents bought a house in San Leandro. San Leandro's borders Oakland and Hayward and Castro Valley. So,
what was that like?
San Leandro?
Growing up over there.
Well, San Francisco always seemed like it was the big city. And it is still. But we could see it from our backyard. We could see it from our deck.
Oh, wow.
And
you guys were on a hill?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Selborne Drive. And I don't know. It's pretty suburban, I would say. Very middle class. And my dad might have been the only Asian.
Oh, wow. Really?
In that neighborhood. I'm racking my brain. I don't remember any other Asian people.
Yeah.
Yeah, at that time over there. But across the street, I think my neighbors were Puerto Rican and Mexican. And then my best friend, Megan, whose parents both grew up in San Francisco.
And whose dad and grandmother have
been on the podcast. Yeah. She lived in the neighborhood, but a few blocks over, so... but everyone was very middle class. Everyone, the parents all had a job. We were all latchkey kids. Like that.
Did it feel diverse? You're hinting at some diversity, but
ish. I didn't think about it then because our elementary school was diverse, and there are all kinds of kids. Low to middle class kids, I would say. So,
were you cognizant of that kind of thing as a mixed race child?
No, the only thing I was cognizant of as a mixed race child was that the super Chinese people and kids weren't feeling me. So I felt that pretty early on when my parents tried to send me, bless their hearts, to a Chinese school on the weekends. And I was like, it was in Oakland. I think maybe, when you're a kid, you feel like everything lasts longer than it does, I think.
Yeah, totally.
And now as an adult, it's quite the opposite.
Yeah.
But they might have only taken me for a month, maybe. And it seemed like way longer than that. But I don't remember having any friends there. I felt very out of place.
Yeah.
I was way more, quote unquote, in place with my white friends. Yeah.
I wonder if that was tough for your dad. Because obviously he
had to
left Chinatown.
But he had to assimilate too, even while he was in Chinatown. So yeah. I mean, he spoke Chinese to his friends, but it was always broken up Chinese because you'd hear the English parts of his Chinese, like McDonald's, or you know what I mean. Yeah. Like it'd be Chinese, and then an English word. But he never taught that to me, which now I'm super bummed. But that wasn't the time,
right? At
all. Like he was. I don't think he was beat, but when you're growing up in Chinatown in San Francisco in the 40s, 50s, none of the schools there wanted you to speak Chinese.
Right. So you went to a fairly diverse elementary school?
Yeah.
Okay.
All kinds of folks.
And then middle school?
Well, from elementary school, our elementary school went from kindergarten to 7th grade.
Oh, wow.
And then then high school was 8th grade to senior year. And I don't think I knew it at the time, but I feel like now my mom maybe was panicking a little bit because I don't think she didn't want me to go to the local high school that all my friends were going to.
Was it a bad, like, why?
My mom and dad had me grow up pretty preppy, quote unquote. Like in elementary school, I was Miss Hesperian when I graduated. So I was like, I don't know. It was the first year they did that. There's like Mr. and Mrs. Hesperian. So that was me. I know. And so I think my mom thought I was going to get my ass beat when I got to high school, which I probably would have. I mean, who knows what would have happened. But my best friend went, Megan, but her parents, well, I'll tell that story in a minute. She ended up going maybe the first half of the first year of 8th grade. My mom decided for some reason or another to put me into a private Christian high school, or no, private Christian middle school for 8th grade in the Valley. So the Valley here in the Bay Area, to me at the time, it was Dublin, Pleasanton, San Ramon, Danville, Livermore out there.
580.
And I didn't really know that area well. The only reason I knew that area a little bit was when I was an ice skater. And I skated.
Oh, do tell.
I skated in Dublin. They had that, like, kind of the closest ice rink. There was also there was an ice rink over in Foster City. I think that place is called now the Landing. You know, right when you cross the San Mateo Bridge.
Yes, Foster City's super weird.
Yeah, whatever. But there was an ice rink there, and there was an ice rink in Dublin, and Dublin was the closest. So that's the only reason why I knew Dublin. And I mean, looking back at that time too, it was crazy. My parents somehow had me in dance. This was like kindergarten, first grade, second grade, third grade. I was in ballet, I was in ice skating, and I was in piano. And
a little performer.
Yeah, and so I loved dance, and ice skating was awesome, but it's expensive, really expensive. And so that only lasted a few years, but it was intense because I would go before school and I'd go after school. And you go, it's like 5 a.m, and then after school, a few days a week. And in Dublin, I was ice skating with, at the time, Christy Yamaguchi and Rudy Galindo, who were a pairs team before Christy went her own way. And also, Brian Boitano was skating at my rink too in Dublin. And we only bumped into him once, I think, at the Target that was across the street.
He was already a big deal?
Yeah, that was ish. Yeah, because it was the 80s, 90s, 80s. Yeah, so, yeah, it was a weird time.
Yeah, and a weird world to be part of.
Yeah, but they weren't big. I mean, Brian Boitano was known, but Christy and Rudy,
not yet.
No, not that well known.
So you knew that. You knew her.
I didn't. I didn't know them. I skated in their sphere.
Do you want to talk at all about? Because something I love is your growing up going to Candlestick stories. Do you want to talk about those at all?
Yeah, my mom's grandmother's husband, so my mom's step-grandfather, I guess.
Sure.
The ones that lived in Pacifica, he had season tickets to the Giants while they were at Candlestick Park.
Yeah.
And
81 games back then, just like it is now.
I grew up going to those games, and I grew up loving Will Clark. I loved Will Clark. I loved him. Yeah. And I would go with my dad and my grandfather, and my grandfather had the best seats, like 4, 5, 6 rows back from home plate.
Whoa.
And on the Giants side. And so when I say I loved Will Clark, I would bring him Big League Chew. Like, they didn't have bubble gum in the dugout. But sometimes he'd come over.
Or actual chew back then. Right.
Sometimes he would come over if he didn't, like Robbie Thompson, who I love too. But not like I loved Will Clark, would come and grab it. Or Bob Brenly, I think once, one of the catchers, would come get it from me. And I had like I think I had a T-shirt that I got made that had Clark on it and stuff.
Nice.
So that was I loved growing up watching and listening to the Giants then. It's a different team now, but it was fun.
It was mostly you, your dad, and your step great grandfather.
Yeah.
That would go to that trio.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah, and I think my grandpa Danny, that was his name, drove some big old American car to the. I mean, it was like it wasn't a big deal to go to games then, like it is now. You just got in the car, you went, you parked, and you walked in and had a good time, and that was it. And the other story I'll tell about my grandfather Danny, which maybe there are other things going on, but you're a kid, you don't know what's happening. He, they grew, like I said, my mom was living in Pacifica. They had a house in Pacifica, and there is a bar in Pacifica, which is still there, knock on wood, after all of this bullshit pandemic is happening. Winter's Bar.
Oh yeah, Winter's Bar.
Which you can see off of the one when you're going down to Pacifica. And he used to...
Good music venue too.
I don't think then it was. It was a real...
Oh, it was just... Okay.
It was... Yeah. I think my grandpa was going there to make bets.
Okay.
And I went along, but I didn't know it was happening. And so he'd give me a Shirley Temple, and I'd just hang out. I mean, maybe that explains why I like dive bars now, but...
Yeah, sure.
It probably explains a lot.
That's awesome.
But I didn't see anything wrong with it, and I don't remember if my mom or my dad knew, or if it was a thing. I don't remember.
No, I don't have this experience personally, but you're not the first guest I've had on the show, roughly our age, talking about being brought to bars as a
80s.
kid.
Yeah.
It was okay. Like, you just bring a kid into the bar and get him a Shirley Temple. Like,
I loved Shirley Temples.
I won't editorialize on that too much.
Yeah.
Were you guys, last thing I'll ask about baseball, were you guys fans in the 89 season? Were you going to games in the 89 season?
I think at that point...
And I'm not talking about the earthquake. I'm just talking about, like, the Giants went to the fucking World Series. That was, like, a big deal.
Yeah, no, as in 7th grade, and obviously still a big fan. And I don't remember the season, and I don't know if we were going, because I think at that point my grandfather was getting screwed out of his tickets, because then that's when MLB was starting to be like a real corporation.
Yeah, and
screwing the working class out of entertainment, and I think he got squeezed out of his tickets by that point, because I think 7th grade. I think my grandma Eula had already passed, so I don't even know. I don't think we were in touch with my grandpa much, but and I don't remember going to games that often, but I remember that specific series, and I remember coming home from 7th grade that day, and we had this like little bar in the kitchen, and I set myself up, and I was going to start watching the game while I was going between that and the Brady Bunch, of course, after school, as you do. Yeah. And for some reason, my dad came home early that day, thank goodness, and then he's not alive anymore, so it's fine. But we used to make this joke anyways. He was in the bathroom riding the Golden Throne when the Loma Prieta hit, and I ducked under the table in our kitchen. And I'll never forget that. It felt like riding a wave. It was so weird. But, my dad was riding the toilet, so there you go. So that was a weird day. But that was huge. It was Battle of the Bay. Yeah. It was a very significant time in Bay Area baseball. And, on one side you had Jose Canseco, and you had Mark McGuire, you had the Bash Brothers, and on San Francisco, it was Will Clark, and it was Kevin Mitchell, and it was good. It was good stuff. Really good stuff.
Did you like the A's at all? Or did you care?
I didn't care as much as the Giants, because I grew up a Giants fan in San Leandro.
Right.
But it was nice to have a stadium, like, going, I think in 7th grade, and maybe 6th grade, we went on, like, towards the end of the school year, we'd be able to go to, like, one game, which was fun with our classes. So you just take Bart and go to a A's game with your class, and it was fun. So I think there was a moment in time, I don't know what year it was, I don't know where I was at in school, but I remember watching the Academy Awards, and I remember seeing the red carpet, and I remember seeing people in black behind the celebrities and behind the actors and actresses, and I'm like, I want that job. I didn't know what that job was, but I wanted that job. Huh. I feel like that was elementary school or middle school. It wasn't high school. I think it was before that. And I didn't know how I was going to get there. But after high school, I went immediately into junior college. I went to Diablo Valley College like the summer after I graduated.
Okay.
I don't know why I was being that ferocious about going to school, but I was like, why not?
Yeah, give yourself a summer, kid.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't care that much about it, and I wasn't going away to school, so.
Did you have the purple Honda at this time?
Oh yeah, Civic,
okay.
Purple Honda Civic,
okay.
with the CD changer in back, like 10-disc CD changer. It was awesome. So I went to DVC, and they had a TV program there. And so I took that, and I was taking, I can't remember, like TV production. And this guy in that class was like, hey, are you looking for an internship? I was like, I don't know, maybe. But it was a way to get in, foot in the door and into quote unquote entertainment, at least up in the Bay Area. So that's when I started my internship career and also communications career. At KFRC, which was at that time 99.7, but like the oldie station in San Francisco in the Bay Area, and a pretty classic station. So I got my start there in 96, 97, 96. Mm-hmm. And I worked in the promotions department, and I thought it was the best thing on earth. It was so awesome. And I got to write scripts for radio, which was agonizing because I didn't know what the hell I was doing. It took forever to write a script.
Did they train you?
A little. You listen to like what they've done, and then they're like, "Here you go, kid." And I'm like, "Sure."
Jeez.
So one of my scripts, I might still have the tape somewhere, but I may not. I remember it was just so painful because it took me forever to write a script because you don't know how to write that way. I mean, I was before just writing papers.
Yeah. And
so I wrote a radio script for the film, The Rock. That was the movie. Yes. John Travolta. No. Was it John Travolta?
Sean Connery.
Yes. Sean Connery and
Nicolas Cage.
Yes. So we were having a big promotion for that film at KFRC. So I had to write a radio script.
The Rock.
Yeah. And it made it onto the radio. I was super stoked.
Way.
Yeah. It was.
Was that your first one?
Yeah.
That got read?
Yeah. And so that's where I started in communications. It's fun. Like I got to go backstage to oldies concerts, and I hung out with two of the monkeys, Peter and Davey. I got to hang out with Davey for a minute.
R.I.P.
Yeah, R.I.P. Davy Jones. Who obviously I had a crush on from the Brady Bunch. Duh, if no one remembers that episode with Marsha and Davy Jones. But it was cool. I had a great time. So I think from after that internship and doing more communications work in junior college, I interned at Bill Graham Presents when there used to be a Bill Graham Presents. Mm-hmm. And mind you, these were not paid internships, FYI.
Yeah.
Those were not the days of paid internships.
Nope.
And Bill Graham was awesome. And man, it was like you got paid in posters. If you're familiar with Bill Graham posters, like from the Fillmore or the Warfield. And I worked in their staging department. And so back then, we had computers, but I was using the Yellow Pages more often to like book our stage managers, like their hotel and hospitality and all that kind of stuff, because they had to manage all these shows that Bill Graham was booking, not only in California, but also in Nevada and some other, I think Arizona too.
Oh, wow.
He had a pretty big reach. And that's fun.
Yeah.
I have some stories. But
anything you want to talk about?
Well, I think the first big concert I got to hang out backstage at was I'm gonna forget a bunch of stuff now. Was at the Shoreline Theater, and I remember driving there. My mom. So my mom's side of the family, we call it the Callaway Curse. Which I actually think just means that We have now it's called IBS, but I had the Callaway Curse on the way to the shoreline because I was there were all these huge stars that were gonna be there, and I was just really nervous. I had to stop somewhere and relieve myself
Sure.
before getting to the shoreline. I was nervous.
All right.
And so it was the Neil Young bridge concert. It might have been its very early conception because I don't even think they do it anymore. But it was like at that time it was Sarah McLachlan. This can really date myself. REM.
Oh wow.
I don't know who else was there. Those are the ones that are really sticking out for me. Maybe Dave Matthews because that's 90s. I know, but it was very early. So I got to hang out and I ate lunch with Sarah McLachlan.
Did she make you cry about puppies or?
No, that was before that time.
Okay.
This was like height Sarah McLachlan.
Did you make her cry?
No, I didn't talk to anybody. But I remember I got to stand off stage, and I was standing there, and all of a sudden this woman came up next to me, and I looked at her, and it was Janine Garofalo.
Oh.
And I was like, oh hey. But I was like, maybe I was 20. 19,
That's so
20.
Weird. What was she doing there?
They're just hanging out. People are just hanging out. I also want to say Margaret Cho was hanging out back there, but I don't. Maybe I'm also making that up. I don't remember. But that was like my first big concert that I got to hang out at. And it was cool. I mean, I loved it. I got to go to shows all the time. I got to bring my mom. Like, they paid us in shows also. It's just like you sign up for your tickets, and it's not like you're sitting front row, but you got to go for free. So, yeah, it's fun. From there, I worked for the San Francisco Giants for 2 seasons. I worked in the 99 season, closing out Candlestick. And then I worked...
you did something like what you're doing now, right? You walked around with a microphone.
Yeah, that was the beginning of my...
You with a microphone.
With me and a microphone. I don't know if you were around in those days in 99 Candlestick. I was the chick that was on screen talking to fans. It was an interesting time then. I got to know some really great people who still work at the Giants, including Lucille. He started, or she, in 99, and we became really good friends that year. And I was a kid. I think I was 21. I must have been 21 because I was able to go to clubs and like go drinking and stuff. But
and Bertha, who's been on the show.
Yeah, I'm Bertha Fajardo. Mm-hmm. She I didn't know her in 99 as much as I knew her in 2000 and 2001 because then we worked in the same department. But in 99 I was in the promotions department. And I would like to say it could be highly contested, but I do remember there was a moment in the promotions office towards the end of 99 and the Giants were like, they were looking for a new announcer.
Wrapping up their time at Candlestick.
And for somehow, I kind of became friends because when you're in promotions, you work with a lot of radio stations and you work with TV and blah, blah, blah. And at that time, KISS FM 98.1 was one of the radio stations we worked with. And I had not become friends with, but I met your friend John Scott, who's been on the show as well, and through that became sort of friends with Renelle Brooks, and I got her tickets for that last week at Candlestick, and we've just always kind of been in touch ever since. But I remember in the promotions office they were talking about one other DJ, a woman, because they wanted to still have women broadcasting announcers. And they're talking about 2 different women. No, they're talking about one woman who is on KFRC still, who I used to work with, Cammie Blackstone. And I could be making this up, but I'm pretty sure I was like, well, what about Renelle? Because I had just worked with her, and they had thought about it, and then just saying, might have started her career.
That was Erin Lim. Join us Thursday when Erin will talk about launching Bitch Talk Podcast. Music for Storied San Francisco is by Otis McDonald. Photography for this episode is by past guest Chloe Jackman. The show is hosted and produced by me, Jeff Hunt. Our website is storiedsf.com, where you can browse more than 100 episodes, check out all of our live events, and visit our store to help support us. Please follow us on Twitter and Instagram, and subscribe to the show on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. If that's Apple Podcasts or iTunes, please do us a favor and rate and review what we do. And if you have any feedback for us or suggested guests, our email is storiedsf@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.